Wherever you go, there you are. You can change cities, change jobs, change relationships, yet the same restlessness follows. Why? Because the one person you can never run away from is yourself. The real journey is not outward, but inward. And that is where peace is either found or lost. We live in an age where running away feels easier than ever. If life gets heavy, we change jobs. If relationships get complicated, we move on. If boredom creeps in, we scroll, travel, or shop. Each action is driven by a subtle belief. If I change the outside, I will feel better on the inside. And for a brief moment, it seems to work. A new place brings novelty, a new person brings excitement, and a new possession brings comfort. But soon, that same heaviness, that same restlessness returns. Why? Because what we are truly trying to escape is not the environment, but ourselves. And no matter how far we run, we are always waiting on the other side. Think of someone moving to a new city in search of happiness. At first, everything feels fresh: new streets, new faces, new energy. But within a few months, the same frustrations emerge: loneliness, anxiety, dissatisfaction. Nothing outside has failed, it is simply that the person brought their inner unrest with them. The new city could not heal what was unsettled inside. It's like changing the frame of a picture while leaving the picture itself untouched. Unless the picture changes, the frame only distracts, never transforms. We often forget this truth. Geography cannot cure psychology. This illusion of escape shows up not only in big decisions like moving or changing careers, but in our everyday habits. How often do we reach for our phones when boredom or sadness arises? How often do we fill silence with noise because we cannot bear our own thoughts? Each distraction is a micro-escape, an attempt to outrun discomfort. But these little escapes do not erase discomfort, they postpone it. The feeling we tried to avoid waits patiently, and when the distraction fades, it returns sometimes stronger than before. The more we run, the more power we give to what we fear. A wise metaphor compares this struggle to carrying a shadow. Imagine trying to escape your own shadow by running faster. No matter how quick your steps, the shadow follows. It grows longer at times, shorter at others, but it never leaves. The only way to truly see the shadow dissolve is not to run, but to stand still and face the light. The same principle applies to the inner world. Peace does not come from escape. It comes from illumination. We must shine awareness on our own restlessness instead of fleeing from it. This realization can feel uncomfortable because it means the responsibility for peace is no longer external. We cannot blame the city, the job, or the people around us for the way we feel. The mirror points back at us, and yet this is also profoundly empowering. If peace does not depend on escape, then we no longer need to endlessly chase it. We can begin cultivating it right where we are, in this very moment. By recognizing the illusion of escape, we reclaim the power to stop running and start listening to the thoughts, emotions, and patterns within that truly need attention. The illusion of escape is seductive because it whispers promises. You will be happy when you arrive somewhere else. But life is not waiting somewhere else. Life is happening here and now. If we cannot find peace in this moment, we will not find it in the next. The sooner we see through this illusion, the sooner we can shift from running outward to journeying inward. Only then do we realize that the destination we've been searching for was never on the map. It was always hidden within ourselves, waiting to be uncovered. Silence is one of the most honest teachers we will ever meet. It does not flatter us, it does not deceive us, and it does not allow us to hide. When the distractions of the world fade, when no music, no screens, no conversations remain to fill the gaps, what is left? Only the sound of our own thoughts. This is why silence feels so uncomfortable for many. It is not silence itself we fear. It is what silence reveals. It functions like a mirror, showing us exactly who we are inside. Some people avoid silence for years, filling their days with noise and movement, simply because they do not want to face what that mirror might show. Imagine sitting alone in a quiet room. At first, it feels peaceful. Then, slowly, the mind begins to chatter. Old memories arise, unfinished worries surface, insecurities whisper. Suddenly, the stillness feels heavy, even unbearable. Most people stand up, grab their phone, turn on the TV, or distract themselves in some way. But here lies the hidden lesson. The discomfort is not in the silence, it is in us. Silence simply uncovers the thoughts and emotions that were always there, but that daily noise kept hidden. If silence feels overwhelming, it means we have much within us that longs to be heard. Cultures across the world have understood the power of silence. Monks retreat into the mountains not because they hate society, but because silence teaches them truths that words cannot. In indigenous traditions, silence was considered a form of wisdom. Those who spoke less were seen as those who understood more. Even in modern psychology, silent reflection is used as a method to observe inner patterns without judgment. Silence, then, is not emptiness, it is presence. It invites us to meet ourselves as we truly are, without masks, without performance, but this meeting with ourselves can be difficult. We often discover emotions we thought we had buried, anger we never expressed, sadness we never grieved, fears we never admitted. In noise, these feelings hide. In silence, they rise to the surface. Think of a pond stirred by constant waves. You cannot see the bottom. Only when the water becomes still does the mud, the rocks, and the hidden depths become visible. Similarly, silence settles the noise of life and reveals the layers of the self. At first, what we see might disturb us, but only by seeing it clearly can we begin to understand and transform it. The key is learning not to run from this mirror, but to look into it with courage and gentleness. Instead of asking, "How do I escape this silence?" we ask, "What is this silence showing me?" Maybe it reveals our loneliness, our need for validation, or our constant chase for approval. Maybe it shows us that our minds are restless, addicted to doing, terrified of just being. Whatever it shows, that reflection is a gift. It is not meant to punish us, but to guide us toward growth. By looking at the reflection, we gain the chance to reshape it. Without the mirror, we remain blind. Over time, the mirror of silence becomes less frightening and more liberating. At first, it shows us our pain, but with patience, it also shows us our strength. We realize we can sit with discomfort and not be destroyed by it. We discover clarity of thought, deeper awareness, and an inner calm that cannot be found in noise. Silence ceases to be an enemy and becomes a companion not empty, but full of insight. The very stillness we once avoided transforms into the ground where peace is planted. When we accept the mirror of silence, we no longer fear being alone because we realize we are finally meeting the one person we could never escape, ourselves. Every feeling that enters our life has a purpose. Anger shows us where our boundaries have been crossed. Sadness reveals what we value and have lost. Fear warns us of danger. But what happens when we ignore these emotions, when we push them away or bury them deep inside? They don't simply vanish. They wait. Like stones placed into a backpack, each unresolved emotion adds weight, until one day, without knowing why, we feel exhausted from carrying burdens we never named. This is the hidden cost of avoidance. The unspoken, unacknowledged feelings quietly shape the way we think, speak, and act. Consider someone who never allowed themselves to process grief. Outwardly, they may seem strong, composed, even cheerful. But deep down, the sorrow lives on. It colors how they connect with others, how they react to disappointment, and how they view the future. They may avoid intimacy, fearing loss again, or carry bitterness, unable to trust joy. The grief they tried to escape never left, it simply disguised itself. In truth, the feelings we resist become the ones that control us the most. To release them, we must first acknowledge them. Naming an emotion is like opening a locked door. Suddenly, there is space for light and movement. Psychologists often describe unresolved emotions as unfinished business. Just like an open wound left untreated, they don't heal on their own. Instead, they fester. The anger unspoken may transform into resentment. The sadness unacknowledged may turn into apathy. Even joy, if suppressed, can sour into emptiness. This is why so many people struggle without knowing the root cause, because the real source is not today's problem, but yesterday's feelings never faced. Life keeps presenting us opportunities to heal by bringing similar challenges again and again. Until the lesson is embraced, the pattern continues. But acknowledging these feelings does not mean drowning in them. Facing anger doesn't mean we must lash out. Facing sadness doesn't mean we must collapse. Instead, it means allowing the emotion to exist without judgment. Imagine holding a glass of muddy water. If you keep shaking it, the mud clouds everything. But if you set it down and let it be, the water slowly clears. Our emotions are the same. When we stop resisting and allow them to settle, they reveal their message and begin to lose their heaviness. The act of acceptance itself is often enough to transform the feeling into wisdom. In many traditions, breath is used as the tool to meet these unresolved feelings. When anger rises, breathe. When fear grips, breathe. When sorrow presses down, breathe. The breath does not erase the feeling, but it gives us the space to witness it without drowning in it. Over time, this practice teaches us that no feeling is permanent. Anger comes and goes, sadness rises and falls, fear swells and fades. What makes emotions heavy is not their presence, but our refusal to let them flow. By holding on, we turn them into stones. By letting them pass, we turn them into rivers. When we finally face unresolved feelings, something unexpected happens. We become lighter. The backpack of stones we have carried begins to empty. What once seemed unbearable becomes manageable, and in that lightness, we discover a deeper peace. We see that emotions were never the enemy. They were messengers, each carrying an invitation to grow. Ignoring them made them heavier, but listening to them makes us freer. The weight of unresolved feelings dissolves not through escape, but through courageous acceptance. And once we learn this, we no longer fear what we feel, because we know we have the strength to meet it. Most people live either in yesterday or tomorrow. Minds replay past mistakes, regrets, and what-ifs, or they rush into imagined futures filled with worries, hopes, and endless plans. Rarely do we rest in the one place where life is actually happening, the present moment. This constant drifting robs us of peace. We may be physically here, but mentally somewhere else. And when the mind is divided, calmness cannot exist. Presence, on the other hand, gathers us fully into this moment, into this breath, into this step. In presence, the chaos of time dissolves, and what remains is clarity. Consider how children experience life. When they play, they are completely absorbed in the game. When they laugh, the laughter consumes them fully. When they cry, it is with their whole being. Children live in presence without effort. Adults, however, often lose this ability, tangled in responsibilities and mental noise. We may sit in a park yet scroll on a phone, missing the beauty around us. We may share a meal but remain lost in thought, absent from the company of those beside us. In doing so, we trade the richness of presence for the poverty of distraction. The secret to peace is not more doing, but more being. The mind will argue, but I must plan. I must analyze, I must prepare. Of course, thinking has its place, but the problem arises when thought never ends. Worrying about the future does not prevent pain, it only prevents peace now. Replaying the past does not change what happened, it only keeps the wound fresh. Imagine carrying a heavy bag on a long journey. Every day you say, "Tomorrow I will set this down," yet tomorrow comes and the bag is still on your shoulders. Presence is the act of finally putting the bag down and noticing how light the body feels without it. There are countless doorways into presence, but one of the simplest is the breath. Right now, take one slow inhale and one slow exhale. For that short moment, the mind rests. It is anchored. The breath cannot exist in the past or future. It exists only here. Similarly, mindful walking, feeling each step, mindful eating, tasting each bite, mindful listening, truly hearing another without preparing a response, all these are gateways into presence. They do not require special conditions, only awareness. The more often we enter these gateways, the more natural presence becomes. What presence reveals is that peace is not something to chase in the future. It is not waiting at the end of a goal, a relationship, or a possession. Peace is already here, woven into this moment, always available if we choose to notice it. Think of a radio always broadcasting in the background. Most of the time, we are tuned to the static of worry and regret. But presence turns the dial, and suddenly we hear the music that was always playing. Peace was never absent, only our attention was. The power of presence lies in its simplicity. It does not demand that we fix every problem before we rest. It does not ask that we be perfect before we feel whole. It simply asks us to come back to now, again and again. The present moment is not a prison, it is a sanctuary. In it, we discover that life is not happening in the past we regret or the future we fear. Life is happening here now, in the very breath we are taking, and when we learn to live here, peace is no longer something distant, it becomes the ground we walk on every day. At first glance, discipline and freedom seem like opposites. Discipline sounds like rules, restrictions, and effort. Freedom sounds like ease, spontaneity, and choice. Most people assume that to feel free, we must remove discipline. Yet the opposite is true. Without discipline, the mind and body become prisoners of impulses, distractions, and habits. With discipline, we gain control, stability, and direction, and from that foundation, true freedom emerges. Discipline is not the enemy of freedom, it is its path. Think of a musician. To play beautiful music, she must practice scales for hours, day after day. To an outsider, this repetition may look restrictive, but because of discipline, her fingers learn to move with ease. Later, when she performs, she is free to improvise, to create, to express. Without discipline, the freedom to play would never exist. In the same way, discipline in our daily lives trains the mind and body so that when life demands something of us, we respond not from chaos, but from calm mastery. The mind without discipline is like an untrained horse, wild, restless, and easily spooked. One moment it runs into anger, the next into fear, the next into distraction. Try to meditate and it resists. Try to focus and it wanders. But when discipline is applied with consistency, the mind slowly learns obedience. Not obedience to outside forces, but obedience to our own deeper intention. Through discipline, we reclaim authority over ourselves. This is the freedom that matters most, not the freedom to do whatever impulse demands, but the freedom not to be ruled by those impulses at all. Discipline does not require grand gestures. It begins with small, repeated choices, waking up at the same hour each day, sitting in silence for 10 minutes, writing thoughts in a journal, moving the body through exercise. These are not glamorous, but they are powerful. Each small act of discipline is a vote for peace. Over time, these choices accumulate, building strength, resilience, and clarity. Just as drops of water can hollow stone, daily discipline reshapes the mind into something steady, calm, and free. It is important, however, to remember that discipline must come from compassion, not cruelty. Harsh discipline, born of self-hatred, becomes punishment and creates resistance. Gentle discipline, born of self-respect, becomes nurturing and creates growth. The purpose of discipline is not to break ourselves down, but to train ourselves upward. When approached with kindness, discipline feels less like restriction and more like self-care. It is the act of saying, I value my peace enough to protect it through practice. The paradox becomes clear. The more discipline we develop, the freer we become. With physical discipline, we gain freedom from fatigue and illness. With mental discipline, we gain freedom from distraction and regret. With emotional discipline, we gain freedom from being controlled by anger, fear, or desire. What greater freedom exists than this? To walk through life not as a servant of impulses, but as the master of our own being. Discipline, when understood this way, is not a cage. It is the key that unlocks the door to peace. For much of life, we are taught to divide ourselves. We separate what we like from what we dislike, what we show others from what we hide, what we accept from what we reject. We create two selves, the one on the surface, polished and presentable, and the one beneath, carrying shame, wounds, and unspoken truths. When discomfort arises, our instinct is to cut it away, to pretend it is not part of us. But the more we resist parts of ourselves, the more fragmented we become. Real peace does not come from escape, but from integration. It comes when we gather all the pieces of who we are and allow them to stand together without judgment. Imagine a person trying to erase their past mistakes. They bury old memories, avoid conversations that might trigger them, and reinvent themselves in new environments. Outwardly, it looks like change. But inwardly, the past is still alive, waiting to be acknowledged. The pain they try to silence whispers in moments of stillness. The guilt they try to hide colors their decisions. The self they are trying to escape follows them into every new chapter. Integration means turning toward that past, not to glorify it, but to embrace it as part of the whole. Only when we accept, yes, this too is me, can healing truly begin. Psychologists often speak of the shadow, the parts of ourselves we disown. Anger, jealousy, fear, or even unused potential that we are too afraid to express. When denied, the shadow grows stronger, influencing us unconsciously. But when faced with honesty, it transforms. Anger becomes clarity about our boundaries. Jealousy becomes insight into our desires. Fear becomes fuel for courage. Integration does not mean celebrating our flaws blindly, but recognizing their role in our wholeness. Every trait, light or dark, carries a lesson. To reject them is to reject the wisdom they offer. A useful image is that of a puzzle. Each piece on its own looks incomplete, sometimes even ugly or awkward. But when all pieces are assembled, they form a picture, meaningful and whole. We are the same. Our joy, our sorrow, our triumphs, and our failures, each piece is necessary. If we throw away the pieces we dislike, the image of our life will never be complete. Integration asks us to gather them, even the difficult ones, and fit them into place. In doing so, we no longer waste energy hiding or escaping. We become whole, and wholeness brings peace. This path of integration requires patience and courage. It asks us to sit with feelings we once ran from, to acknowledge stories we once avoided, and to forgive parts of ourselves we once despised. Forgiveness here does not mean forgetting, nor excusing harm. It means recognizing that to grow, we must release the grip of resentment, especially resentment toward ourselves. When we stop cutting pieces away, the energy once used for escape is freed, and that energy becomes fuel for living fully, here and now. Ultimately, integration is an act of love. It is saying to ourselves, I will not abandon any part of me. And when we practice this inner embrace, something remarkable happens. The battles within quiet down. The divided voices soften. The self we once fled becomes an ally. Peace is no longer a fragile state dependent on conditions. It becomes a natural outcome of wholeness. In this way, integration is not the opposite of growth, but its very foundation. Growth does not mean escaping who we were. It means weaving all that we are into something unified, resilient, and at peace. In the end, peace is not found in escape, but in arrival. Arrival in this moment, in this breath, in this life exactly as it is. We spend years searching outside new places, new faces, new distractions only to discover that what we were seeking has been within us all along. The silence we once feared becomes a mirror. The feelings we once avoided become teachers. The discipline we once resisted becomes freedom. And the parts of ourselves we once rejected become the very fabric of our wholeness. Peace is not a destination waiting at the end of a long road. It is a practice repeated daily in the way we breathe, in the way we listen, in the way we choose to stay present. It begins not when life becomes easy, but when we stop running and choose to meet life as it is. The journey inward may feel uncertain at first, but it is the only journey that brings us home. So if you wish to find peace, do not look outside. Do not wait for tomorrow or for perfect conditions. Sit with yourself here and now. Face the silence, face the feelings, face the whole of who you are, and when you do, you will see that peace was never something to be chased. It was always something to be uncovered. Wherever you go, you will always meet yourself. The question is, will you meet yourself as an enemy to escape, or as a companion to embrace? In that choice lies the difference between a restless life and a peaceful one.